The Cubs have a problem, and we saw what it looked like a couple of days ago when that fifth starter spot came through, and then we saw what it looks like when the Cubs get a great start. Matthew Boyd picked things up for the Cubs last night. The night before, it was a blowout, and it was another one of those games where we didn't really know who was going to start, and we threw Ben Brown in and had a lot of trouble. We're going to talk about that fifth starter spot. We're going to update you on a couple of guys that we feel like could help the team eventually in that area. And then what are the Cubs looking at right now up to the moment when it comes to deals that could be available for this team to get that fifth starter? All that on the show. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, brought to you by our friends at D Community. That's where we're going to have our Web3 home, and that's where we're giving away tickets to the Cubs playoff game. So make sure that you share with your friends. Great to talk to you guys this morning and talk a little bit of Cubs baseball. What a great win. Just did it all. It's fun to watch. All right, let's go. All right, what do you say, everybody? Welcome to the Cubs baseball channel. Again, Mick Gillespie at Broadcaster Mick. Thank you guys for all the comments, for getting in there and duking it out, talking baseball on a daily basis, and talking about our favorite team, the Chicago Cubs. And I've said it before on here, and I'll say it again before we really get into the thing, but been a Cubs fan for a long time, since the 80s, and then been in the organization for 20 years. So it's just a passion of mine, loving Cubs baseball. When we win, I'm in a good mood, and when we don't, hey, it can be pretty rough. But I love this team has a vibe right now, and it really is fun to see these guys, this vibe, this Wrigley vibe that they got going on. And, we'll see what happens between now and the July 31st trade deadline. All right, let's just get into this. Matthew Boyd, brilliant again. Missed the All-Star game because he wanted to rest. Love that idea. With things kind of progressing like they are in trade talks, I'd almost like the Cubs to get a fifth and a sixth starter to throw in there, or maybe maybe when Jameson Taillon gets back, but just to keep Boyd fresh so that we get this performance when the postseason comes, because right now he is so locked in, and he had another brilliant performance helping the Cubs get that win against Kansas City. Now, let me go back to the first game of the series. There is a black hole in that fifth starter spot, and it's been there since Jameson Taillon went down. Now, I want to say this. I think the front office did an excellent job of building depth in the pitching department, right? The starting pitching, because you lose guys, right? Justin Steele out for the year. Okay, there's your best pitcher. So then you still have a lot of guys. But then you lose Javier Assad. And the latest on Javier Assad is that he's unlikely to return from his left oblique until August or September. That's the bad thing. The good news is that he is about to resume his rehab with the rookie level Arizona Complex League Cubs, right? That starts on Thursday. So that's a good thing. He's missed the entire season after aggravating that left oblique strain that happened in April. He didn't give it enough time to heal. And this is a guy, to me, who's been so pivotal for the Cubs in his time. And because he can start, because he can relieve. A season like this with Assad would have been great. He hasn't been an option this entire year for the Cubs. So we'll see how that bounces back. But just kind of throw that out there as another guy that the Cubs don't have. Now, Jameson Taillon was, I don't want to say he was the fifth starter. He's probably the third starter before that right calf strain, still out. And he's going to be out at least through July, right? He was injured, running after, working out. And it could have been worse, but he's just started throwing on flat ground and is expected to be cleared for mound work very soon. That's according to MLB.com, right? So that's a good thing. Don't expect him to be back in July, and who knows when he's going to be back in August. I mean, it's going to take time to not only throw, but then you got to get stretched out, and who knows, you got to go on the mound, and this is another one of those injuries that just takes a long time to heal. So those two guys are not going to be available and until maybe late in the season. Okay. So then these are the three guys that the Cubs have kind of looked at for this fifth starter spot. And we hoped we would get some depth from one of these guys, right? Ben Brown pitched last game. I thought that the Cubs had no other option than to put him in. I thought he was a few pitches away from having actually a pretty good outing, but it just wasn't there. Made some mistakes, gave up some home runs. A 4-1 lead turned into a blowout, like a 12-4 blowout pretty fast. Jordan Wicks, kind of hoped that he would be able to take that success that he had a few years ago in the big leagues and turn that into success. He wasn't good either. And then Chris Flexen, who has started in the past, has been way better in the bullpen than he has been as a starter. And I don't feel like any one of these guys has really put themselves in position to take that spot, to grab that job. And these games have turned into, since Taillon went down, they've just been drubbings every time you get into one of these games. And you can see it coming. And each of these guys have had an opportunity to jump up and take this job, and they haven't done it. Now, let's talk about some trade options. I said this a couple of days ago, and maybe it's not totally dead yet, but it feels like the Cubs and a lot of these other teams in baseball are going to shy away from Sandy Alcantara. Jim Bowden, though, of The Athletic, says that in MLB Radio that he still thinks that the Cubs could go after Alcantara. 7.14 ERA. He's been bad. He's coming back from Tommy John. I think eventually he'll be able to get it turned around, and he's under control until 2028. But the question that I have, and he's been so awful this year, is how long is it going to take for him to get to the point where he's able to help you? And what are you going to have to give up? And are you willing to make this trade knowing that you might pick up somebody that's not going to be able to do much this year to get you where you want to go? Now, Jed Hoyer has talked about looking at past performance to decide whether to make a deal. And I will say this, going back to when Theo was there and Jed was his right-hand man, the idea is always to try to buy low and sell high. So maybe Sandy Alcantara is one of those situations, but it feels like to me that the Marlins know that his value is way under what it could be because he just hasn't been able to snap back, and he's had awful outings, and he's been hit hard in every category that you look at statistically. So this to me would feel like if the Cubs made that trade, you're getting him for next year and not for this year. And then I've talked about this a few times too. Like, what if the Cubs and the Diamondbacks, which I feel like are a great trade partner, we're going to talk about them in a second, did a show on that a couple days ago. You go and you get both of the starters that they have that are going to be free agents at the end of the year, right? Could the Cubs maybe do the same thing? There's another guy in the Marlins rotation, Edward Cabrera, who is been rumored in trade talks a lot. But the problem is that although Cabrera is a much more economical option, he missed a start before the All-Star break with elbow discomfort. And the MRI came back. Obviously, it was clean. He's still pitching. But the problem is you're already dealing with a guy with arm injury issues or with an arm problem or potentially one. And here you are looking for somebody that's going to come in and kind of give you a rubber arm that you need for that fifth starter spot. And you need somebody that's going to come in and be effective immediately. And this is the problem that I have with some of these guys that we're talking about. Where would you slot Edward Cabrera in this rotation? If I'm the Cubs, I'm not looking for a number 5 guy. I want someone that is going to be a number 1 or a number 2 guy. right there with Shota, right there with Boyd, top of the rotation. Give me some depth, okay? Where when you get into these short series and you're playing the Brewers and you're playing the Dodgers and you're playing the Padres and they have aces, you have guys that can match up. I think that is so crucial as we look and see how things are going to go moving forward, right? You go out and get a number 5, you're getting a number 5. And one of the biggest weaknesses that I look at with the Cubs is I just don't see a dominant starter outside of Shota Imanaga and Matthew Boyd. And if this is going to be a World Series contender, I don't know that Edward Cabrera or the way that Sandy Alcantara has pitched this year, if that gives you anything like an ace. Now, another name that continues to pop up is Mitch Keller with the Pirates. And, you know, he's got a good arsenal, nothing overpowering. Yankees and Blue Jays, and then the Cubs are the 3 teams that you keep hearing with him. Who knows if there's other teams that are out there for Keller. But, you know, here's another guy that you're talking about that you could get. And to me, you know, Keller kind of, I know he's a former All-Star, but to me, he kind of feels like he's along the same lines as what you have already. And, you know, how much better is he than Colin Ray? I mean, how much better is he than a healthy Jameson Taillon, right? You know, so it's kind of one of those deals where you're like, yeah. And then you're trading within your division too. And the Pirates are stockpiling young talent. I'm not saying that you don't do a deal if you think that it could help you win this year and legitimately help you win. I'm just saying that they're stockpiling talent and you're going to have to deal with that. And that's Paul Skeens. They've got a ton of good young players. They're just trying to clear some payroll. Keller's a guy but you know what? The thing about Keller, and I will say this, is that he could be one of those guys that comes in and immediately you realize, okay, this guy's a good number 2. Or he's a good number 3. And maybe he's not a number 5. But I just kind of feel like he's a mid-level. And if you get into the postseason, how worried are you about Keller? You know, that's kind of where you're at right now. But you keep hearing the smoke that's an answer. And look, we're after watching the way that things went the last time that this 5 spot in the rotations swung around, he's definitely a huge upgrade from what we've seen. Now, here's the one that, to me, and I continue to talk about this, right? If the Diamondbacks are serious about moving out Kelly and Gallen, those 2 guys to me are critical type players that could help you get over the hump. I put them right there with Shota and Boyd. Do you get one? Yeah. But how about if you got both? And I know it's a lot to pay for rental guys, and that's kind of how this deal goes. But if you're going to give up Owen Casey, how about packaging those 2 and Suarez together and getting all 3 of them? Because it's going to hurt when you see how good this guy's going to be. And you realize you had him. And it just doesn't feel like the Cubs are in any hurry to put him in the big leagues. So if you could get all 3 of those guys, and I know it sounds crazy, but it's not that far-fetched. Having those 2 guys at the top of the rotation is a game changer to me. You all of a sudden can match up with the Dodgers. You all of a sudden can match up with the Padres. But it is such a risk because if you go one and done and you're out, you've just blown you've just blown your load on basically a dud. And honestly, Jed's time as the Cubs president has kind of felt like that. A lot of promises and not a lot of success. But making a deal like that could change all that. And that's not a shot at him. It's been the way it is. Hey, 23, you got, all of a sudden you make a run and then you fall apart. Last year, never really in it, made a run at the end just for cosmetics. It just hasn't, that there really hasn't been that time like this year where you're looking and you're going, man, we got a chance here. This team can beat anybody, but you got to add some help to the top of the rotation. This would be amazing. And I'm sure the Yankees and a lot of these other teams feel the same way. The Cubs are the ones, though, that have the prospects to be able to pull off just some kind of major game-changing type of deal. And then the other guy, Seth Lugo of the Royals. I look at Lugo and I'm like, here's a guy who he's kind of just like a trickster. I like what he does, but how's that going to play in the postseason? I think he's an upgrade from what the Cubs have right now. That kitchen sink approach kind of guy that throws a bunch of different stuff. But Kelly and Gallen are guys who have made that run, who have pitched in those big games. And I just keep thinking that if I'm the Cubs, that's kind of where I feel the most comfortable with, as far as if I'm going to take a risk. That to me seems like the best risk to take just because of their experience. And also those guys were planning on being in the postseason. They didn't think that the Diamondbacks were going to fall off like this, that Corbin Burns was going to get hurt. But that's kind of what happened. So talking about Seth Lugo, we're going to get a chance to see him at Wrigley Field this afternoon. Pretty good pitching matchup. Colin Ray, who's Mr. Consistent, 8-3 and a 3.80 ERA, against Seth Lugo, 6-5 with a 2.94 earned run average. I'm going to be watching intently just to kind of see Mr. Lugo for myself. But Cubs back in a tie for first place with Milwaukee. They lost. The Brewers did. Their 10-game winning streak is over. So they're not going to win every single game until the end of the year. They're still a tough team. But the Cubs with 60 wins, tied with Milwaukee, got the White Sox, then we got the Brewers. It's going to be a lot of fun to get there. But anyway, back in a tie for first, and we'll be talking to you. If anything breaks, we'll jump on that right away. You know that. We'll even go live. If the Cubs make a major trade, know that you can count on us for live reaction. And then, as this trade deadline gets closer and closer, we're going to be covering it here as well. But comment section, tell me what you guys think. Again, know that our D Community Web3 home is coming. We're going to have tickets to the playoffs. We're also planning a trip to Wrigley to come and do some shows there. I'm trying to put that together now. It's just tough with my schedule, but love talking baseball with you guys on a daily basis, and we'll do it again tomorrow. So thank you. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, and nice to see the Cubs back at first. Go Cubs.